So welcome you all, and we'll be continuing with the session on active learning strategies. We stopped at a point where we talked about adult learning. We talked about what is active learning, what is passive learning. Why is there a need for active learning? So looking into all these concepts of what students of today need, who are digital learners, what teachers need to do today. We discussed a few points on the basic concepts around adult learning and active learning. Now we move into the topic of what strategies can we use to make learning converted from passive learning into active learning. So in this particular module now, I shall start talking about various strategies which you can adopt based on the topic which you have, based on the concept which you want to cover in that particular topic. You can choose any one of these techniques and strategies to convert your learning from passive into active. So, if we start looking at the major strategies, typically some of these techniques which I am talking about here, like the 1 minute paper and the muddiest point, some of these have been cited in literature which is related to teaching learning methodologies. And so, I'll be speaking about those terms and elaborate a little on each of them. You may be able to decide which one of them is appropriate for a particular topic. For example, let's start with the first active learning strategy, which is a 1 minute paper. This is a very simple concept where while you are explaining the concepts to the students for a particular topic and you have completed, then you wait for some time, pause, and ask the students to recap what they have understood and write it on the paper. So you pass around sheets of paper to students and ask them, take 2 minutes and jot down what have you understood from what I have taught you today, and write now. Then the students will think, they will start processing the information which they have gained, and once they process the information in their mind, they'll come back and they'll put down something in simple words. This is called a 1 minute paper. And once all of them have sat and written down something, then you can do one thing. You can choose some of the students, maybe somebody who is very intelligent, maybe others who are very quiet, and ask them one by one to read out what they have written. Exactly what happens is every student may not write the same thing. So you will get your statement which you had explained written by one student in one set of words, somebody else will write it in some other way. So students will again revise what you had explained and how those two students explained to you. And they will put forth their idea of what they have understood to the entire class. So a 1 minute paper can be used to pick up a particular concept which is a little difficult to understand and ask them to write in their own words. For example, in my topic which I covered in the earlier module, I can say like this, that who is an adult? Have you understood that? Who is an adult learner? Have you understood that? So I may give you a 1 minute to take a piece of paper, write down the points over there, and then I may ask three people or 4 of you to speak about it. And we will all sit and discuss, hear and discuss what people have to say about adult learners. So the concept which I explained earlier is revised now by taking inputs from the students themselves. So in this way, recapping will happen and students can take a test like a 1 minute paper and recap what they have understood in their mind, and they put it forth in front. While this topic is being covered by the students and discussion, it is possible that some of the students may have understood it in a wrong way. So that clarification can happen after all the students have written down in the 1 minute paper. So in a way, a 1 minute paper is very useful in revising the concept again from the student point of view, and specifically important if the concept is a little difficult, because it helps the students to clarify and also bring out any difficult point which is there. The other active learning strategy which is given in the slide is called as the muddiest point. Now, if you look at a particular word, the muddiest point, what does muddy mean? Muddy means filled with mud. So for example, if you're walking in the rain and there's a lot of mud around, you can't see what is on the ground because the mud and the water has got mixed, and something below lying on the ground cannot be seen. In the same way, it is possible that with some concepts, students get very confused. And they are not able to relate it, they are not able to understand it. So, to identify the difficult and the confusing points which are not understood properly by the student, we use this concept of muddiest point. What do we do here? Once a particular difficult concept is explained, or if there are 3-4 concepts which are similar but different, then there is confusion among students' minds. In those cases, you ask the students, you explain all the concepts, you give a pause, ask the students to take their notebooks, take 1 minute and try to write down what is the muddiest point for them. Means what? What is the topic which they have not understood correctly? Which part of the topic is confusing for them? Now, what happens on the student's point of view? When you give them the exercise of doing the muddiest point, they start thinking what is understood. They think of what is confusing. Then they say, yes, I think I don't understand this. So, they'll sit down, start recapping in their mind and they'll put it down, what they have not understood. And most of the times you'll find that only 4 or 5 things are muddy for most of them. So some students may have understood everything. There may be few students who have not understood anything, but that's a little rare. But most of the students will find some 3-4 points which are difficult. So on an average, you will be able to understand the confusing points for everyone. Once you get this feedback from everyone, so you don't have to go and ask everyone. You can put the concepts on the board and say, which of these have you understood? So they will say, okay, this is my muddiest point. This second point is my muddiest point. So you make a list of all those points. Then for some of the topics which nobody has understood, you may revise it again. For a topic which somebody has understood, you ask them to sit in pairs. We remember the earlier session I talked about that if somebody knows something and the other one does not know, you ask him to share and explain again. So when you teach somebody, you master it. Exactly the same here. After getting the muddiest point, identify people who know, who don't know, make pairs and make them sit and discuss and teach each other. With this particular exercise, the topic becomes very clear because it is revised multiple times. Once explained by you, then discussion among them, recapping it again understanding it. The topic now is not confusing. The entire concept is uncovered. It is open in front of them and they'll never forget it later. It is easy for them to go back home and revise it because they've understood it here. So with this particular point, with 1 minute paper first in some concepts, muddiest point where there is a lot of confusion, the other point we can use is called as a role play. What exactly is a role play? There are some topics where you can carry out a role play. Means, if you have some different roles in a particular topic, you can ask students to sit together and each one is given a role and they'll play it out. It's like a small skit or a drama which you don't play, you ask the students to play among themselves. Let me take an example here. Suppose you think of the concept of software engineering and you're talking about project management. So you'll have a project team. You have a customer, you have a project manager, you have the developers. And you want the students to understand what is project life cycle. So how do we go about it? You can do a role play by asking the students that, okay, let's have some volunteers. One person is going to, a group of 2-3 people will become the customers. You will have one person who becomes a project manager. And you have 3-4 other people who is the developing team. Now, you ask them to come on the dais. All of them will sit together and they will interact with each other to carry out the project. Now see what happens. They're actually, putting up that role and they're acting it out. While they are acting it out, they're also understanding what should be done, what should not be done, what is their function, how will they go about it, what will they do. While the same time when the students are on the dais, the students who are not on the dais and they're sitting in front, they're also going to imagine, if I was there, I will have to behave like a project manager, I'll have to interact like that. So students on the dais and off the dais together start actually, imagining that you are there in that role, acting it out. And they actually get the feel of what exactly is going to happen in a real scenario. So that's called a role play. Now when you do a role play, it takes a little more time, but the returns are good because the entire concept is actually done by the students on their own, and they act it out, and nobody in the class will forget it later. They may forget what you speak because it's a concept, but that role or a drama which is played maybe for 5 or 10 minutes will never be forgotten. So role play is another activity which can be done. Apart from role play, you can also have something like debates and group discussions. Where do you use it? See, for example, you have a particular topic where you may have a not one point of view but multiple points of view. So, for example, a very simple question for all of the counselors could be: do you want 100% attendance always in the class? It's a debatable point. You may say yes, that as a teacher you want it, but the students may say no, I cannot attend, I don't want to attend. Now that's a debatable question. Now suppose if you want to get a positive opinion and you want everyone to attend, it is possible to give such a question to all the teachers, to all the students together and say, okay, let's have a debate on this. We are having half the teams who are going to, half the students in a team who will say 100% attendance is mandatory. They are the teachers. On the other side you have students, half the students who are in team B, and they say we are students and we will decide when to attend the lecture. Now for 10 minutes you can have them arguing with each other, discussing with each other, and from this some conclusion will emerge, and it is very much probable that the teachers are going to say that we want attendance and we are going to make you learn, and slowly the students will say yes, because you want us to learn, you are doing this for the benefit of us, we need to attend. So in topics where you can have multiple opinions, debates can work. And debate becomes live, everybody starts contributing, and when I have to contribute, I have to think. I have to think what to say, I can't say just blankly. So I am getting involved in the subject, I am getting engaged in the subject. And this is what was talked about in that video. Digital learners, they want to engage themselves. You need to engage them. And debate is one way which you can do it. There's another example which can be taken here. Say for example, like debate, you can have another activity called as group discussion. What is group discussion? You have a group of students sitting in front. So you pick up some volunteers from the class, some of them who don't talk much, because they are the ones you need to get them involved. You get them out, make them sit in a group, and the remaining students are observers. For a particular topic, you tell them, let's discuss this. So topic could be something from the news, something related to your subject, some topic where people have some idea about it. It can't be an entirely new topic. So for example, before I'm taught you active learning, I can't tell you that you come here have a group discussion on what is active learning. You don't know. But it is possible for me to ask you that I want some volunteers from all of you. You come and sit here, and I'm going to give you a topic for discussion, and the topic is going to be how do adults study? It's a simple one. They can put in some inputs. They will say, okay, how do I study now? How do my parents study? What do they do? How have they observed teachers studying? And accordingly they can contribute. So some topic where students have some information, you can use group discussion. But for some topic where students don't have information, you need to give some information before they can contribute. So according to that, you need to identify different active learning strategies. Another strategy over here is called as a case study. Now, what is a case study? For example, you want the students to learn how internet works. You can tell them, let us see how Gmail works. Let them go and study and come back, and let us all sit together here and have a discussion on it. Say for example, for the counselors and the teachers here, I may say, okay, I want to have a case study later, so I'm going to tell you, go back to your class and give me the case study of how you taught a particular subject for the students of this particular class. So a live example which is taken to understand the concepts in the theory is called as a case study. And case studies cannot be for everything. And in case studies you need two things. You need to have a proper idea of which topic to give, where there is some live example which they can think of and come back. Because you want the students to go back, understand that particular thing on their own. It should be easy to learn. They need to prepare, they need to study, and they need to come back. On the day when they come back, you will have a discussion on it where everybody will participate. So another example of a case study is something like this, that you can ask the students that, okay, go back and look at one of the particular railway sites and tell me, how do you think they handled the project? of converting Indian Railways railway booking information from online manual system to online system. So they'll have to go and read, think and come back. Some of them may also go back home and ask their parents, how were you doing booking earlier? And see the booking which is there today. So when such live examples are taken, students get interested and they'll go deeper, ask questions on the internet, ask their friends, ask their parents, gather information together, process it and come back to the classroom. Now the role of the teacher is very important. There is no need for the teacher to sit and discuss complete thing or read out something or explain the whole thing. Ask typical questions to which the students already have the answers. So the case study can go through, explanation will be through getting inputs from the students together. So all the students will participate, give their answers, and once they put in the answers together, the whole case study is understood by people around. And the parts of the case study now have to be mapped to the concept in the theory, which is very simple because now the concept is understood because the live example is understood. So we have done what is called as a reverse way of doing things. So case study is very helpful from this point of view. So like roles, debates, group discussions and case studies, you have another important point which is called as a demonstration. What is a demonstration? In a demonstration what we do is we explain or we demonstrate that particular concept. Demonstrate means actually show it to people. Say for example, I want to have a concept on how does Google search work. So instead of me explaining in theory how Google search works, I will open the internet, I'll go to Google, then I will type some search, some word, and then I'll show them the screen that so many searches have come. Then I'll link on something and say, see, this is important. How much time it takes comes on the right hand side of the screen. So instead of actually telling the theory, I show them a live example from the internet with Google search so they understand how the actual search takes place. Now when I demonstrate the practical part of it, they understand what is happening conceptually behind. So demonstrations can be like that. Especially in subjects like physics and chemistry also there are a lot of demonstrations. So you want to do a particular experiment, you do an experiment and you demonstrate how that particular concept looks in theory. In physics also the same thing. In computers also you can do that. So for example, you have a particular program running or you want to show some data structures. You write a program, you run it in front of the students and then you tell them this is how the program would work, this is the logic, and then explain to them the actual theory of the data structure. See that when it goes reverse from practical to theory, students take it faster. And now comes the next point. Apart from these case studies and demonstrations, we have two important points which have been very useful in the current context of the internet, that is recordings and simulations. Now recordings and simulations basically are what? There are a lot of YouTube recordings available. So for example, in the first module session which I took earlier in active learning, I showed you a small video of the digital learners today. Why I showed that to you? Because you get a feel of what students want. I would have spoken the same thing just with words, but you would not have imagined it. I could have shown you the visual of the students. You could have just thought of it and forgotten. But I'm sure just now when I'm speaking to you about the video, all of you are trying to remember the video and you are actually can see it in your mind that this was the video which was shown earlier. So video makes a lot of difference. And with video or recordings, things are always understood. Now because it's a recording available, students can always go back home, go through it again and remember it again. They can use it for revision, for recapping, and they'll never forget it. So recordings can be used like that. Then there's something else called as a simulation. What is a simulation? A simulation is an abstract way of doing the thing again. So for example, in computers, if you want a particular, a very simple example would be in operating systems, where with memories you have various algorithms which are used. FIFO, LIFO, etc. So you may have an actual simulation where the pages can be, shifted up, pages can be replaced again and again using these algorithms. So instead of talking about it theoretically, you can actually show it that if you have so many pages and you want to use some algorithm, what would happen after some time? So the actual page numbers would change and you can see it on the screen, and it's a live thing which is happening. It is not happening physically actually in the circuit, but it's an artificial way of showing it. So simulations are basically created again later. They reflect the scenario but not the actual physical setting of the scenario. So simulations and recordings is the other way you can use. Now you can't have simulations for everything. Simulations sometimes are available on the internet. You need to go and find out, and you may be able to use those directly for some concepts. For some areas you can actually simulate by having an environment made in the class. That okay, all of you are now, imagine you are sitting for the exam and we simulate an exam. So the entire scenario looks like an exam, so they'll sit and actually do something. Now when they do a particular activity seriously, then they will never forget it later. So recordings and simulations can be used like this as active learning strategies. There are two other concepts which are used. One of them is called as PBL, problem-based learning. This is one of the newer concepts which is used in India, but it is very much used abroad. What exactly is PBL? Project-based learning says that instead of actually explaining the complete concept at all, you pick up a problem and you ask the students to solve the problem on their own, and while they solve the problem, they will learn the concepts. And then you explain the concepts again later. So there is no theory given in front. Only the problem is used so that they solve the concepts. How do we use it in programming? A very simple way would be, or maybe how do you use it in software engineering? Give the students a particular project, ask them to implement it on their own. While they are implementing it, they will learn the entire software development life cycle. In the team one of them may be a project manager and the other roles will be there. So they will actually simulate those roles and they will understand the functions of those roles. So like this, you can have different activities which can be done from what is called as problem-based learning. It is possible that a particular project can be given completely on their own. It may take maybe a month or 1.5 months to complete. Most of which they will do at home, and you will monitor the progress in between. And when they complete it, they'll be able to understand all the concepts which are associated with this particular topic. But here, there's no lecturing. There is no continuous teaching in the class, but it's more about giving a project which they do on their own. We don't call it as a project basically. In a way, it is like a project, but it is called as a problem. So a problem statement is given and they'll think of how to resolve the problem. Another technique which is used for active learning is called as a mini project. And it's a very simple thing. Very often what happens, students can't, if you give them a big project, they may get scared. They will, be less confident of completing it. And they may not even start it properly. Or they get stressed out. So in such cases, it is important that initially when the concepts are new, students should be given simple things to do, where they will succeed, they will feel confident to pick up larger projects. So you start with small topics, ask them to do something on their own, come back, give them a bigger work, let them go and complete, come back, then give them larger work. So like this, the volume of the work can be expanded in the span of the entire curriculum. So small projects can be given in the first week. It is not necessary that the project has to be something they have to do on their own. It could also be a survey. It could be a small assignment from the internet. For example, suppose I say that we want to know which are the different search engines available on the internet, on the web. So it is possible that we ask the students in the first week, okay, each of you is going to go back and make a list, write down the features of all, one of the search engines which you study well and come back. So it is not all, it is one of them. So all students will go back home and each one will think of, let me search for a good search engine. So all of them start reading and they're doing something. It is interesting because it is not in the book. It is on the web. So it gives them a different way of looking at things. So this was a small project. Now when the students come back, you discuss the project with them, then give them another one, little bigger. They'll again go back and they'll do it and come back. And that's how explaining something in the class, giving them some work to do at home can be combined together for efficient learning. And students have been engaged in the activity, students have been engaged in the subject, and none of them will tell you that I didn't feel like doing, or I don't want to do it, or it is not interesting. So these are the different strategies which can be used for active learning. There is another set over here where we look in terms of little different techniques, where the first one is something which I have explained earlier, but it is also called as TAPS learning. Think, pair, share. What exactly is this? You know, in the earlier, in one of the examples earlier, I said that students know something, you ask them to teach the other people. That is one part. Similarly, if you have a particular topic which is a little difficult, but it is something related to a live environment, and students may know something about it, you can make groups of people together, so make a pair, and ask them to think and share together with each other. When they share something on their own and they interact with each other, they're actually discussing in the classroom, and they're actually learning something more. After they finish the entire discussion in pairs, you can ask them, some of them, to come out in front and speak and tell the other people. And from there, you can build the topic and explain the next level concept to everyone together. So think, pair, share can be used like that. Apart from this, now this all techniques we talked about is contribution to the learning. I explained, then these activities, some of these can be done. Some of them can be done without any explanation. But how do we now know that students have understood everything? I need to find out. I can't wait for the final exam to tell me that, okay, this student did not study at all or he has not understood. When I explain a topic today, I need to know today whether he has understood or not, and if there's a doubt, I need to revise it again with him. Revision cannot be done for everyone because other people know. So we need to find out who has not understood what and accordingly decide how to explain further. So there are some other ways or strategies of doing this, where one of them is called as a pop quiz. What exactly you do is you have some small questions which can be given to the students, and all of them will start solving those questions. Just a 5-minute quiz where 4 or 5 questions are asked is a multiple choice. And after doing maybe 2-3 concepts in the class, maybe after 30 minutes, you do this pop quiz. Now the moment you ask them to do the pop quiz, they'll be able to do some, they will not be able to do some. That's fine. And after the quiz is done, you can read out the answers and they'll just put a tick or a cross. Now the point is, because his marks are not counted anywhere, you tell them that, see, now you got so many marks, so what is it? How much have you understood? How much have you studied? So the student himself will realize that I have not done well, I need to put in more efforts. Now the put in efforts does not come in studying at home. It actually comes in participating in the class and active learning. So instead of just asking him to go back and read at home, ask him to practice more here, with other people. Take somebody's help and do it, and then learn better. So pop quiz is one of them which can be taken off and on in between. Anytime, you feel that some 2 top concepts are done, and then you can ask for a quiz. Of course, you can't do it every day, because every day, it will become the same routine thing. So you need to do it once in a while. There are other activities here which are used to judge whether the students have understood everything or not. And one of them is called as IEF, which is informal early feedback. Now, normally in any cycle of teacher-student teaching, in between you may have some feedback taken formally, and then accordingly you may decide what to do further. But at the end of the class, when you finish the class, or in between the class when you have explained something, students' faces tell you whether they have understood or not, or whether there's a doubt. It is very important in between to halt or pause and ask the students, have you understood? Is there something you want me to repeat again? So this sort of feedback of asking questions and getting answers orally is one way of IEF, informal early feedback. It's also possible sometimes, students don't want to tell you anything. No, means they may be reserved, or they don't want to tell you that they have not understood. So you can have a small form where you have 2-3 multiple choice questions, and you can ask them, this particular topic was clear or not? This particular topic is understood or not? Will you be able to do this particular activity? If you have understood this topic, you can do it. So some 2-3 questions can be asked without names on the form. You get this feedback, and accordingly you know which particular topic you need to repeat again. So these are the different ways in which you can have different types of testing done to understand the student's point of view. Another very successful and very important method is called as student-generated questions. As teachers, normally, we always feel scared, or not even scared, we are not confident, or we don't want to involve students in creating questions. So very often we find that students also have good questions in their mind. So we have done this exercise in many places and we found it to be very successful. What I have done once in a while is, I've asked the students that this is the particular topic I've taught today. Now you go back and each of you will come back with 5 questions. So next time all the students come back and I have a big, say if there are 30 students, I have around, if 30 students make 5 questions each, I get 150 questions in a bank. When I put this whole bank together, I can ask the students, now sit with this, take out all the duplicate questions. So maybe the question set reduces to 100. Now for the exam I say that when I'm going to have a multiple choice, when I'm going to have a small exam in between, I'll pick up questions only from the student generated questions. So maybe I taught 2 chapters and there were 100 questions totally. All the students will have to read those 100 questions to answer the paper. So they are studying. So it doesn't matter whether I generate the questions and put in the paper or I take it from the students and select some and put it in the paper. The objective is students should learn, and when you hit 100 questions bank, all the students are going to read that because they want to do well. So you can ask the students to generate questions, and generating questions is not easy. It takes time, it takes efforts. It also takes time to understand the concepts. So students actually end up learning because they want to give you a good question with a proper answer. So learning happens over here. So this is another way in which you can involve students in your activity and ensure that they are learning. And the other part of here now comes this CATS, which is called as Classroom Assessment Tests. So sometimes in between, like pop quiz is a little shorter, you can have subject some question asked and ask them to write the answer on their own. It's not expected that as a teacher you should go and check everybody's answer. You put up some main points in your presentation, or you list them out on the board and ask the students, exchange the papers and correct them. And if somebody has a doubt, you resolve it for everyone. So students get a fair idea that when they give the classroom test, how they did. Have they understood everything or not, and whether what they have understood, whether they have written it correctly or not. Because most of the times in the exams, what happens is, they understand the topic, but they're not able to write it properly, and then they lose marks over there. So Classroom Assessment Test, called as CATS, gives them confidence for writing the exams. So once in a while you can use it. Then you have 2 other types of assignments or assessments, which are called as formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments are basically assessments which you do throughout the curriculum to make the student identify whether the student is understanding or not. It is not for the teacher, it is basically for the students. And summative assessments are basically taken as a part of the curriculum. For example, you may have some midterm exams, you may have some assignments, and you may have some final exams. So combination of these exams as a part of the curriculum forms the summative assessments, where you can't do much. They will be taken anyway for the certificate or the degree. But formative assessments are taken in between so that the student understands which topic is difficult and where some extra work has to be done. After this, when I said that okay, we need to explain students everything, then we need to ask questions. Questions is the most important point of the curriculum. Questions tell you whether the student has understood or not, and questions will be able to tell you which topic is not understood and what is required. So there is a very nice model which is given, which is called as a funnel model, and that is shown in the figure over here. In a funnel model, basically information comes in, and this information, when the information is put in the student's brain, I need to question in such a way that I get the answer which I want. Now what sort of answer do I want? Do I want the student to give me yes and no answer, or do I want the student to think? Based on that, I can decide which type of question to ask. So in the funnel diagram which is given, questions can be categorized into what is called as checking questions, closed questions, probes, and open questions. And if you can realize in the funnel shape, you find that checking is little information taking, closed is little more information, probing has to analyze more information, and open also has to analyze more information. Now let me take some examples to give you clarity on this. What exactly is checking? Checking or closing is something simple. I may ask you a question. What is the time right now? You just have one single answer. Did you understand or not? There's a single answer, yes or no. But if I ask you, which topic did you do not understand? Or why did you not understand this topic? Then it's a probing and an open question. Probing and open questions basically help the student to analyze more information and come back with a longer answer. And longer answer means students are getting engaged in the classroom. The points which I gave you earlier now have been elaborated a little further again here, where one of them I told you earlier was open discussion. So we don't say just like, are there any questions? We just give them a point and ask them to keep on discussing about it and just give more questions in between to make them think more about the topic. The other method of participation is, using response cards. Give this, some questions to students and ask them to write answers for that. Now, typically in an environment like a counseling environment, yes, you can give the cards to the students, they'll go back, write the answers and come back. Now, earlier when I asked you, you can ask the students, have you understood a particular topic? That is called as polling. Orally, when you ask everyone together and one of them will say, yes, I have not understood this topic. You may have other things like, subgroup discussion, which I talked about earlier, then learning partners, where I said that the student is going to teach somebody else what is not understood. So these are different concepts where, participation can be incorporated. The other 2-3 concepts which are basically used in abroad universities, where one is called as a whip, where the teacher goes around the group and we ask short answers to key questions. So important questions, we ask them to quickly give the answer. So this is more about, knowing whether the student has understood the concept or not. Then we may have a panel discussion, which I already covered earlier. Another method is called as a fish bowl, where like a bowl, we have the students sitting in a group, and in the group the full group will discuss. Basically fishbowl and panel is similar, but fishbowl is used for a very small group. And there are many games which can be played depending on the type of the topic and the subject which you have. And another very important point which is commonly not used here is called as calling on the next speaker. So when we ask a particular student to talk, he can decide who else should answer the remaining or the next part of the question. So students also get involved because they don't know whose turn will be next. So sharing inputs will come from the student, as well as asking his friend to answer the next point also will come in. So in this case, the teacher becomes a little dormant role, and the students start getting involved to point out to some other person, now you answer, and all come together. If we looked at the different types of learnings which we saw, active learning and passive learning, the next point is, what is the impact of active learning? The main impact is uncovering the subject, keeping the world open for them. So, effective teachers, there was a big quote which said, effective teachers don't cover the curriculum, they uncover it. You need to uncover it so that the students can see the value of the topics inside, the subjects inside, the concepts inside. And there is curriculum literacy happening in the classroom. And the last point which I want to cover over here, which talks about a new concept in the education arena, which is called as a flipped classroom, and it is very, very relevant for distance learning. In a flipped classroom, basically, we redefine education, where we say we have a series examining innovations in local education. So, it's an education model where students watch the lesson at home and do their assignments in the class. Now see the difference that happens. We have a classroom where I teach and students do the assignments at home, and in the flipped classroom it is the reverse. Students will learn at home, come back here and do the assignment. So if you look at that active learning concept, then in the slide I've given a very nice quote from Joseph Albers, which says, good teaching is more about giving right questions than giving right answers. So how do we do that in flipped classroom? In a flipped classroom, what we are trying to do is students do homework at home, so the remembering happens at home. When they come to the class or either in the homework, some part of understanding will happen. And when they come to the class, we have a set of questions which are given to the students, and they discuss it and they try to apply the concepts learnt at home in the topic for the day. And while they are discussing all these assignments in the class, the assignments cannot be just write this answer, write that answer. It is more about, can we do it in this way? Can we apply it somewhere? Give some example where you can do. And with that, the grading can be done, so the students, we can analyze whether the students are understanding how much they have done at home, what was difficult for them. So in the flipped classroom, the way the entire class goes is going to be different, and which is very relevant in terms of distance learning, because the higher level of learning will now happen in the classroom instead of happening at home. Or it is not left to the student's choice how much he wants to read, because if he does not read the basic and come in the class, he cannot do anything in the class. So first he may not do, second time he may not do, but third time he will have to read and come back. So over a period of time, flipped classroom will have a better advantage in the class. So in this flipped classroom model, it is very different from the traditional classroom, because school at home, whatever we do now is reversed. So the videos and the assignments and the studies are done at home, and when they come to the class, they will just do the homework and the difficult questions, where actually discussions and everything will happen in that particular place. So if you looked at the different strategies which I took just now, I talked about various strategies of active learning. I talked about the different ways in which you can involve students in terms of asking them to discuss, and in terms of asking questions to them to find out whether they have understood or not. If you look back at your own, your own subject and look at the way you teach right now and what changes you want to make, you can think of 3 different ways in which you can add active learning to your lectures, and you can note it down. So you will have something to do later after you finish going through this module. And if I look at this here, I say teamwork makes dreams work. And what should be the dream? For digital learners, their dream is, let me create, let me evaluate, let me apply, let me learn, engage me. And for that, we need to work together with the students. Don't leave it to the students to do what they want, but make them do what you want. Instead of you doing the work, the students will do the work. That is where active learning will gain predominance, and students will be able to learn effectively and come back better prepared for the next lectures. So there was a small feedback which I thought of sharing with you, where it gives you the value of active learning with the impact on it. So there was one student who came back and told me, the 2 subjects which I had learned from you, and I don't think that there's any point to refer to those books again. I'll never forget it later. That's what he said. And that was 10 years after the subjects were taught to him. So if your basic topics are taught to the students, the next topics they can learn on their own. And there was another one which is also relevant for your curriculum when you teach them. Do not show anger by punishment. This is very, very important. When I talked about respect for the students, that's the second point here, that do not show anger. So one of the students had given a feedback that rather what I noticed was that you focused on the outcome. Now what happened is that I had given an assignment and the student had not done the assignment. So I said, okay, you haven't done it, but then if you have not done the assignment, you can't understand what I'm going to teach today. So you go out, write down the assignment, and then come in the class. So what he says here, I remember giving an assignment, and when not complete, asking us to complete it before entering the class. And once completed, admitted us to the class without the slightest ill feeling, as if nothing happened. This also is very relevant for all of you. If something is not done well by the student, it doesn't mean that he is bad. It is that particular activity which is not done. And it is important that you ignore that activity and explain to him the importance of the activity so that he doesn't repeat the same thing again. But get him to the class the moment he does it, because if you get him to the class once, next time he'll come back, otherwise he'll start bunking. And over a period of time, other students also will start missing the class, and you'll not have good attendance, and your subject will not be learnt by the students. So whenever something wrong is done by the student, it's not that he's doing it purposely, but he may have some other issues. Probably he didn't understand or he didn't have time. So it is important to sit with him and ask him what happened. Why didn't you do it? I can't say, why didn't you do it, or you are not good. No, why didn't you do it? What happened? Do you need help? And probably he'll say, no, I didn't have time, but somehow I didn't do it. Next time I'll do it and come. That is good. Because when he does it again, he'll do it himself. he'll come back and he'll start attending the lectures with proper interest in learning the subject. And there was one more feedback which says, believe in the students. If you do not believe in the students and say that they are good, why will they try to be good? So the student said like this, thanks for your strong belief on me that helped me in building supernatural power in me. And I need your guidance and support for the rest of the life. Now, I don't remember the supernatural power, but I always tell all the students, you're good, you can do it. And I think that you can do it makes a lot of difference in the student, because he knows he can do, he may or may not know, but he starts doing because we believe in him. So as teachers, it is very important for teachers to believe in every student and indicate that yes, I am there behind you and I know that you can do it. And then the students will try to prove you true and correct. And for that, they will start performing well. So there was a very nice video here which talks about Harsha Bogle, who says that attitude is better than talent.
Excellence is not about talent alone. In fact, a major part of excellence has nothing to do with talent. And in course of time, once you go beyond a certain level, ability or talent is the most useless virtue to possess. It's what you do with that talent that matters. And that's why Mukesh used a word that I love, attitude. Beyond a point, it is attitude that counts for far more than talent. Because talent breeds an ego. And talent never solves problems beyond a point. And I was fascinated by something that Sandy Gordon said when we were doing a program together. Because I had seen a lot of young cricketers, extremely talented, who the moment they faced a roadblock did not know what to do. Because they had never had to struggle to succeed. They always used their talent to succeed. And Vinod Kambli is an example of that. The moment Courtney Walsh bounced him in Bombay, he was 22 years old. Was he? Yeah, he was 22 years old then. In 1994, he was 20 years old. Didn't know what to do, did not play a test match after that. His last test match was when he was 22 years old. Just did not know how to play the bouncing ball because talent had solved everything for him before. In the Australian Army, when they are, and this is something that doesn't come from sport, but it's something a sports scientist told me, that when they're building an elite core team, they look at your career record, your track record, and if you've never failed, they don't pick you. They don't pick you because they say, if this man experiences failure, will he know what to do? They pick people who failed and bounced back. And that is where your attitude comes through. And I mean, let's look at excellence. What is excellence about? It's about being the top 10% in your profession. I mean, I know I'm talking to people who want to be in the top 1%, but there are a lot of ordinary people around us around. So let's say top 10%. Is talent important when you get to be in the top 10%? I mean, everybody in the top 10% will have the same talent, right? So what's your USP? It's what you do with the talent that counts. And unfortunately in our sport, and I think in India as a nation, we're dazzled by talent a great deal. I found that beyond a certain time in sport, as indeed in broadcasting, that your work ethic and your attitude counts from far more than talent. I mean, Tendulkar is a prime example. The moment you say Tendulkar, if I asked you to, if you had one of those things that talk show hosts do, I'll give you a word and you give me a connecting word in one word. You say Tendulkar, you say talent. Right? He played 55 games as a 14-year-old without a break. 55 days. He'd practice for 2 hours, play a game, practice 2 hours, fall asleep on the dining table. And do that 55 days in a row. That's attitude. You know, we think, and this is something we talk about in our corporate lectures as well, where we advise against talent. When Tendulkar was born, it wasn't that this nurse picked him up and said, here Mrs. Tendulkar, here's 70 hundreds for you. Yeah? It isn't Tendulkar's talent that's produced 70 hundreds. It's his work ethic, it's his attitude, and more than anything else, when he reaches the top, it's his passion to perform. And that counts for far more. The attitude and the passion counts for far more than ability. Ability opens the first door. It might open the second door. It's not going to open the last door for you. Because the guy who's bowling the ball at you has got equal ability as you. He's not going to run up to bowl and say, oh, sorry, you're a genius. Sorry, I'll give you a simple ball. Which is what India's bowlers did in 1948 when they went to Australia. They were so much in awe that they said, we are going to bowl to Bradman. It was understandable in those days.
So that was the last part of the summary which I took up. Now let me summarize the entire topic now. We started in the earlier module, we talked about adult learners. Then we talked about what is active learning, the need for active learning, the strategies which are used, what will be the impact of active learning, and what's the difference between active and passive learning. And you need to be convinced that it is good and it's going to help you. And finally, I took the last topic where I talked about what is flipped classroom. So with this particular topic, I close this module where I would like to tell the teachers, take a risk. We feel things are, just teaching, my talking is enough in the class and that's all will work. It does not. It is take some risks, climb higher. You can season your teaching with active learning. And when I played this particular video of Harsha Bogle, there are 3-4 points which are important for teachers, because teachers are role models for students. And if you have some of these points with you, they will also reflect into the students and they'll also become better individuals and they will learn on their own. Harsha Bogle in his video talked about ethics, passion, excellence and attitude. I think these things matter more than others. So if you have an attitude, students will learn that from you. If you have the quest for excellence, students will learn it from you. And all these things which happen, which you display to the students, they will take. And all this is possible to be given along with active learning, and students can become better individuals for the future. So that's where it is, and if there are any questions, you can get back on the email ID and the telephone number which is given, and you can communicate further. Thank you.